Not this trick or treat, but this trick or treat. Trick or Treat stars Marc Price, Tony Fields, and is directed by Charles Martin Smith. Okay guys, before I get into this review, this is September. We're officially in September, which is 1 month away from October. So I want to make a special announcement. 31 Days of October, the second annual for this guy, is coming. And I've already scheduled some guests to be there, so I'm going to be doing weekly updates on what I watched over the previous week. And I'm so excited. This is going to be so much fun. I had a blast doing it last time. I was completely exhausted at the end of it, but I got my second win. I'm really looking forward to it. And what that is I'm going to watch a movie, or try to watch a movie every night during the month of October. And then I'm going to discuss what I watched in a video that I will post probably on Monday, the following Monday. And like I said, I will have a special guest or two for each episode. So I'm so looking forward to that. It's going to be fun. And now we're going to get into a review for a Halloween-inspired film. This is Trick or Treat. It came out in 1986, and it is a heavy metal music type horror film. So anyway, let's get into this review. Trick or Treat is about this metalhead. He's in high school. His name's Eddie Weinbauer, played by Marc Price. And he is obsessed with metal music, specifically Sammy Kerr, who is one of the biggest metal acts of the day. This is a fictional character. So Sammy Kerr dies in a hotel fire, and this just sends Eddie over the edge. He just goes into this huge, deep depression. But where the horror element of this story really kicks in is that Sammy Kerr is actually trying to come back from the dead. Eddie gets this record from the local radio DJ played by Gene Simmons. Yes, Gene Simmons. And when he plays the record backwards, he starts getting these demonic messages from Sammy Kerr. And so at first, he's really cool with this, and he uses Sammy to get back at all the high school bullies that he has to deal with. And really, Sammy takes advantage of this aspect. And so eventually, Eddie realizes that this turns out to be a worse situation than he imagined, and now he has to do what he can to send Sammy Kerr back to the grave. Now, I think metal and horror go together hand in hand. It's not surprising to find that most metalheads like horror and most horror fans like metal. Not all, but most. I'm one of those guys. I grew up loving heavy metal music. This movie came out in '86, and I was a pretty young lad at the time, and I really started getting into metal music at that time. And so this movie actually came out right around that time, so it was perfect for me. And really, this is one of those forgotten gems. And often when you say Trick or Treat, people automatically think of the 2009 anthology film Trick or Treat. Most people don't even know about this movie. It was forgotten. There was going to be a 20th anniversary DVD for the movie, but that fell through because they couldn't get the licensing rights for the music by Fastway. But I loved this movie so much when I was a kid throughout the years that it has always stayed with me. But I think what works the most about this movie is the director really took the source material seriously. Most of the time when you talk about metalheads, it usually turns out to be some type of comedy, but this one, it didn't do that. It actually combined horror with it, which I think actually works better than comedy for the most part. And I'm surprised that there haven't been too many horror movies that combine horror and metal. This is one of the few. But another thing that works so well for it is the relatability. It's set in high school, and every high school, especially in the 80s, has metalheads. And this kind of gives you an inside look at what it's like for a metalhead in high school. You know, they're treated like sometimes nerds are treated. And a lot of times, people from the other side of the tracks, they don't really understand where metalheads are coming from. Eddie goes through all these trials and tribulations. He's made fun of constantly. He's picked on. Most of the time he's picked on because the bullies don't understand him. Really, metal music is the only thing that gives him life. And again, this is relatable. A lot of metalheads can attest to this. To me, metal music is an escape. It's a way to put aside all your problems, no matter what side of life you come from, if you're rich, if you're poor. I've often thought that being a metalhead is really being a part of a community. Also, I thought the character Sammy Kerr was really interesting in this movie, played by Tony Fields, the late Tony Fields. He actually died of AIDS in 1995. What's interesting about him is he comes from more of a dance background. He was actually in a couple of Michael Jackson videos, believe it or not. But he actually turns in a pretty chilling performance in this movie. Every time he is in a scene, he takes control of the scene. He takes command. And I really love the scene where he comes out and he's at the high school party, the Halloween party, and he takes over the stage and becomes lead singer in the band and sings the song Trick or Treat by Fastway. And really, most people will say that that is the best scene in the movie, and it really is. That's just a badass scene. Also, that's a good segue into the soundtrack for this movie. The whole soundtrack was composed by Fastway, and I still have this CD to this day. And to me, it is one of the best heavy metal movie soundtracks that I think I've ever heard. Really, there is not a bad song on this album. And I think that's one of the biggest things that keeps this movie afloat for fans. Most will say the soundtrack is even better than the movie. Now, if you look at most of the DVD covers, you'll see Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne on the cover, and it's just the worst representation of this movie because they have such a small part. Gene Simmons is actually a good actor. He used to act in other movies in the 80s, and I thought he did a fine job in this movie, actually. His character was interesting. Ozzy Osbourne, on the other hand, is more of a comedic cameo. He is on the TV screen that Eddie is watching on one of the scenes.
These evil people have just got to be stopped.
As far as any cons for this movie, it's not for everybody. If you don't like metal music, then you might not like this movie at all. If you like metal music, then you probably will, especially 80s metal. Also, I think Marc Singer does a fine job in the movie, but if you know his work, he was on Family Ties and he played, the geek. So it's really hard to see him as a metalhead. But like I said, I don't really have a problem with him in this movie. So in the end, I would definitely give Trick or Treat a high humdrum. I think if you're a metalhead, then you might give it a purchase worthy because it is a good horror movie to me. I think the story is really interesting. So what are your thoughts on Trick or Treat? Many of you probably have never even seen this movie, so if you get a chance to see it, let me know what you think. And also, I'd like to know, what are your plans for the month of October? Do you plan on watching a lot of horror movies this October? Anyway, guys, make sure you join the Killer Flicks Facebook group. We're gonna be doing a lot of fun things in the month of October. My 31 days of October is gonna intertwine with Killer Flicks. So there's gonna be a lot of great discussion going on, so make sure you jump in for that. Like, subscribe, and comment to Drumdums. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd, and Drumdum out.